My name is Claire, and am 32 years old. The day my father texted me those 5 words, my hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my phone. I disown you. Talk to my lawyer. I stared at the screen in my kitchen, the morning coffee turning cold beside me, and felt something inside me crack wide open. For months, I'd watched my stepmom Patricia systematically destroy everything my late mother had built, turning my father against me with surgical precision. But this text was the final move in her chess game. My heart hammered against my ribs as I typed back a single word that would change everything. Okay. He had no idea it'd been named on every account since Mom died 6 years ago. And I was about to make him regret every single word. Before we dive into what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you're ready to hear how a single text message led to the most calculated move of my life, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is about to take you on a journey you won't forget. Let's get started. Growing up, my father was my hero. After Mom died of cancer when I was 26, he became more than that. He was my rock, my anchor, the one person I thought would never leave me. Those first terrible months after we lost her, we'd sit together in the living room, shed decorated, neither of us knowing what to say but finding comfort in shared silence. Dad would make her favorite tea, even though neither of us drank it, just to smell something that reminded us of her. We had Saturday morning pancakes at the diner on 5th Street, the one with the red vinyl booths where Mom always ordered extra syrup. He taught me to drive stick shift in her old car because he couldn't bear to sell it. When I graduated from college with my business degree, he was front row, crying harder than I was, holding up a sign that said, "That's my girl," in Mom's handwriting, because she'd made it before she got too sick. My mother's death from stage 4 breast cancer devastated us both in ways that felt insurmountable, but we leaned into each other and somehow made it through. I poured myself into building my marketing consulting firm, working 80-hour weeks because staying busy meant not thinking about the empty chair at holiday dinners. Dad was so proud of every milestone. When I landed my first six-figure client, he took me to the expensive steakhouse downtown and told everyone within earshot that his daughter was going to run the world someday. He'd bragged to his golf buddies, to neighbors, to the guy bagging groceries. I was his purpose after Mom died, and he was mine. We were supposed to be unbreakable. Then, 18 months ago, everything began to shift. Dad met Patricia Whitmore at a charity gala for the Children's Hospital, one of those black tie events where wealthy people write checks and feel good about themselves. She was early 40s, impeccably dressed in a silk dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and she had this polished charm that made everyone in the room turn when she laughed. I met her 2 weeks later when Dad brought her to Sunday dinner, our sacred tradition that had survived Mom's death and countless life changes. Patricia was sweet that first night, asking questions about my business, complimenting the pasta dish it attempted from Mom's recipe. But there was something in her eyes when she thought no one was looking, something calculating and cold that made my stomach twist. Their romance moved like wildfire through dry grass. Within 4 months, they were engaged. I tried to voice my concerns gently, catching Dad alone one evening after Patricia had excused herself early. "Don't you think it's a bit fast?" I asked, trying to keep judgment out of my voice. Head looked at me with something between pity and irritation. "Honey, when you get to my age, you realize life's too short to waste time. Your mother would want me to be happy." That stung because he was using Mom's memory to justify something that felt wrong in my bones. I'd seen a red flag the week before when we'd gone to brunch, and Patricia had been dismissive and almost cruel to our waitress, snapping her fingers for service and leaving no tip. But the moment Dad walked back from the restroom, her face transformed into pure sunshine and warmth. The wedding happened 9 months after they met, a small ceremony at the courthouse that felt rushed and secretive. I was there, smiling in photos while my gut screamed that something was terribly wrong. Patricia wore cream lace and carried roses, and Dad looked happier than I'd seen him since before Mom got sick. I wanted to be wrong about her so desperately that I convinced myself I was just struggling to see him with someone new. Within weeks of the wedding, small things started changing. Patricia made comments that seemed innocent on the surface but cut deep underneath. "Your father needs less stress from family obligations," she said one Tuesday when I called about our Sunday dinner. "Maybe we should make it monthly instead of weekly." I felt like I'd been slapped, but she said it so sweetly, with such apparent concern for Dad's well-being, that objecting made me look selfish. Our Sunday dinners, the tradition Mom had started when I was 5 years old, began disappearing from the calendar. First monthly, then every few months, then not at all. Patricia redecorated Dad's house with frightening speed, erasing Mom's memory from every corner. The photos that had lined the hallway, chronicling 30 years of marriage and family moments, vanished into boxes in the attic. Mom's beloved garden, where Shed spent every Sunday morning tending roses and talking to her plants like they were friends, was torn out and replaced with modern landscaping that looked sterile and cold. When I asked Dad about it, he was defensive in a way had never been before. "Patricia has good taste. The house needed updating. You can't expect me to live in a museum." The breaking point came 3 months into their marriage, when I discovered that Mom's jewelry, the pieces Shed specifically left to me in her will, had been donated to charity. I confronted Patricia directly, finding her in what used to be Mom's sewing room and was now some kind of meditation space. "Those were meant for me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Patricia barely looked up from her yoga mat. "They were collecting dust in a drawer. I thought someone in need could benefit." "Isn't that what your mother would have wanted, to help others?" The manipulation was masterful because she was right that Mom was generous but wrong about everything else. When I told Dad, expecting him to understand the violation, he sided with Patricia immediately. "It was collecting dust. Let it go." This is exactly the kind of drama Patricia warned me you'd cause. That phrase, the kind of drama Patricia warned me about, echoed in my head for days. What had she been telling him about me when I wasn't around? Patricia's campaign to separate Dad from me was systematic and brutal in its precision. Phone calls that used to be answered immediately started going to voicemail. I'd leave messages asking Dad to call back, and he never would. Later, much later, I discovered Patricia had been screening his phone, deleting my messages before he even knew I'd called. She scheduled couples activities, weekend trips and dinner parties, during the exact times I usually visited. It seemed like coincidence at first until it happened every single week for 2 months straight. Dad's 68th birthday landed on a Saturday, and I'd been planning his favorite dinner for weeks. I'd bought the ingredients for Mom's pot roast recipe, the one that took 6 hours and filled the house with the smell of rosemary and red wine. I'd even found the specific Oregon Pinot Noir Mom always used, ordering it from a specialty shop 3 states away. When I arrived at the house at 4 in the afternoon, arms full of grocery bags, Patricia answered the door in a travel outfit with luggage by the stairs. "Oh, didn't he tell you?" she said with manufactured surprise. "We're leaving for Napa in an hour. I arranged a surprise wine country trip for his birthday. Maybe we can celebrate with you next year." The humiliation burned through me as I stood there holding bags of food that would go to waste, staring at my father's packed suitcase while he came down the stairs oblivious to the ambush. "Sweetheart, I thought you were coming tomorrow," he said, genuinely confused. Tomorrow had never been the plan. Patricia had lied to him about when I was visiting, then scheduled the trip to overlap. When I tried to explain, she was already ushering him toward the car with reminders about their flight time, painting me as the confused one who'd mixed up dates. But Patricia's most effective weapon was her ability to befriend Dad's entire social circle and poison them against me slowly. She volunteered for committees at his club, hosted dinner parties at the house, became the charming wife everyone adored. And in private conversations, shed plant seeds of doubt. "Claire seems to be struggling lately. I'm worried about her, or she's been asking about finances a lot. I hope she's not in some kind of trouble." These whispers traveled through Dad's friend group like disease, and suddenly I was hearing through the grapevine things that made no sense. Fletcher, Dad's golf partner of 20 years, mentioned casually at a chance encounter that your dad says you've been too busy for family lately. Too busy? I was the one being shut out. Patricia had crafted a narrative where I was the distant, troubled daughter, and she was the concerned stepmother trying to hold things together. The business situation escalated from concerning to alarming within 6 months of the wedding. Dad owned Crawford Commercial Properties, a successful real estate business head built over 30 years from a single office space to a portfolio worth millions. Had always promised that business would be mine someday, not because of nepotism but because I'd worked summers in that office since high school, knew every property, understood every client relationship. "This is your inheritance, baby girl," had told me 100 times. "Everything I built is so you'll always be secure." Patricia convinced him to restructure for tax purposes, bringing in her brother Dominic as a business consultant. I should have seen it coming. Dominic showed up with expensive suits and an MBA from some prestigious school, talking about optimization and modernization. Within weeks, I noticed my name being removed from company documents. The quarterly reports that used to be emailed to me automatically stopped arriving. When I drove to Dad's office to confront him, he was distracted and dismissive. "Patricia knows finance better than anyone, honey. Her brother's credentials are impeccable. Trust the process. This is all to protect the business long term." But Roger, Dad's longtime business partner who'd been with him since the beginning, wasn't convinced. Roger pulled me aside after a chance meeting at a coffee shop, looking over his shoulder like he expected to be followed. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. "Watch your father's accounts. Dominic is making moves that don't make sense for the business. Money's going places it shouldn't." His warning felt both validating and terrifying. The family turning against me was perhaps the cruelest part of Patricia's strategy. At my cousin Garrett's wedding that summer, the atmosphere toward me was frigid. My Aunt Dorothy, who'd been like a second mother after Mom died, barely spoke to me. When I asked if something was wrong, she said coldly, "I think you know." But I didn't know. My cousin Mallory, who I'd been close with since childhood, accused me of using Dad for money at the reception, her voice loud enough that people at nearby tables turned to stare. "Everyone knows you only visit when you need something," she hissed. The accusation was so absurd, so completely backwards from reality, that I couldn't even form a response. It took weeks to piece together what had happened. Patricia had been hosting family gatherings at the house, small, intimate dinners and holiday celebrations that I was never invited to. At these events, she'd been carefully constructing a fictional version of me. I was ungrateful, only interested in Dad's money, jealous of his newfound happiness, and causing him stress with constant demands. None of it was true, but Patricia told the lies with such conviction, with tears in her eyes and concern in her voice, that my family believed every word. By the time I heard the accusations, they'd been repeated so many times they'd become fact in everyone's minds. Thanksgiving was the final proof of how completely she'd turned them against me. I showed up at Aunt Dorothy's house, where we'd gathered every Thanksgiving since I was born, with the pumpkin pie Mom's recipe had perfected. Dorothy answered the door and looked genuinely confused to see me. "Claire, honey, we weren't expecting you." Patricia had told the entire family I'd declined the invitation, said I was spending the holiday with friends because I found family gatherings stressful. 20 people believed I'd chosen to skip Thanksgiving. Not one of them had called to ask me directly. I'd never checked Dad's accounts before, even though technically I had access. When Mom was sick, in those final terrible weeks when she was still lucid but knew time was running out, she'd added my name to everything: bank accounts, investment portfolios, insurance policies. "Just in case something happens to your father," she'd whispered from her hospital bed. "I need to know you'll be protected." I'd cried and told her nothing would happen to Dad, that she was going to beat the cancer, the lies we tell dying people. But she'd insisted, made me sign paperwork right there with a notary she'd arranged, her hand shaking as she squeezed mine. "Promise me you'll watch over things." I'd promised, never imagining I'd need to keep that promise against my own father's interests. Out of respect for Dad's privacy, I'd never once logged into those accounts in the 6 years since Mom died. But after Roger's warning, sitting alone in my apartment with fear crawling up my spine, I pulled out the folder of documents Mom had left me. The passwords were written in her careful handwriting, numbers and letters that spelled out inside jokes only our family would understand. My hands trembled as I typed the first login credentials. The screen loaded, and my breath caught. Dad's main savings account, the one that had held over $800,000 the last time I'd seen a statement years ago, had less than $40,000 remaining. I refreshed the page, certain it was an error. But the numbers stayed the same. Frantically, I checked the transaction history. Massive transfers, some as large as $100,000, had been moving out regularly for the past 6 months. The destination accounts had names I didn't recognize, alphanumeric codes that meant nothing to me. I checked the next account, then the next, a pattern of devastation revealing itself with each login. Investment accounts Mom and Dad had built over decades were being liquidated, taking huge penalties for early withdrawal, the money vanishing into the same mysterious accounts. Dad had refinanced the house Head owned outright, the house he and Mom had paid off after 25 years of mortgages, taking out a $400,000 line of equity. That money was gone too. By the time I'd checked everything, I felt physically ill. Over $2 million had been systematically drained in less than a year. This wasn't careless spending or bad investments. This was calculated theft. And I knew exactly who was behind it. I called a private investigator the next morning, finding Sterling through a lawyer friend who specialized in financial crimes. Sterling was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude who'd spent 20 years with the FBI before going private. "I've seen this pattern before," she said after I explained the situation. "Give me 2 weeks." What she uncovered was worse than I'd imagined, a trail of destruction Patricia had left across multiple states and multiple victims. Patricia had been married 3 times before my father, always to wealthy older men. Her first husband, a successful surgeon in Oregon, had divorced her after 18 months. Head walked away significantly poorer, his retirement accounts drained. Husband number 2, a real estate developer in Nevada, lasted 2 years before discovering Shed opened credit cards in his name and racked up debt he was still paying off. Husband 3, an investment banker in Colorado, had been the smartest. Head hired his own investigator, gathered evidence, and forced a settlement that left Patricia with nothing. But Shed learned from that mistake. Shed gotten better at hiding her tracks. The offshore accounts Sterling uncovered were sophisticated, shell companies within shell companies, money being funneled through banks in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. Patricia wasn't just stealing from Dad. She was executing a long-term con that had probably started the night she met him at that charity gala. Every smile, every loving gesture, every moment of apparent devotion had been performance leading to this systematic asset stripping. Sterling found paperwork that made my blood run cold. Divorce papers, already drafted, sitting in Patricia's personal email. She was planning to file within 6 months, as soon as the last transfers cleared. By then, Dad would be left with nothing but an empty house and massive debt. Shed disappear with millions, probably to another state, another charity gala, another lonely, wealthy man. I gathered every piece of evidence Sterling had compiled, printed documents until my home printer ran out of ink, organized it all into a folder thick enough to use as a weapon. Then I drove to Dad's house, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and desperation. This was it. I'd show him the truth, and he'd finally see Patricia for what she was. Patricia answered the door in yoga pants and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Claire, what a surprise. Your father's resting." I pushed past her, not violently but firmly enough to make my determination clear. "Dad!" I called up the stairs. "I need to talk to you right now." He appeared at the top of the staircase, and I barely recognized him. Head aged dramatically in the months since I'd seen him up close, his face thinner, shadows under his eyes, moving like a man much older than 68. Before I could say a word, Patricia interjected with a performance worthy of an Oscar. "She's been harassing us," Patricia said, her voice trembling. "Checking your accounts without permission, invading our privacy." My stomach dropped. How did she know I'd accessed the accounts? Unless she'd been monitoring them too, watching for any interference with her plans. Dad's expression shifted from confusion to anger as he descended the stairs. "How could you?" he said, his voice breaking. "After everything you're spying on me? Checking my private accounts?" I tried to explain, pulling documents from my folder, but Patricia was already crying, hand pressed to her chest like she might collapse. "I've tried so hard to welcome her into our family," she sobbed. I've been patient with her grief, her jealousy, her constant interference. But this is too much. She turned to Dad, eyes streaming tears that I would bet money were manufactured. "I can't live like this, being watched and suspected. I've done nothing but love you and try to make a home with you. Dad asked me to leave. Not firmly, not angrily, but with a kind of disappointed exhaustion that hurt worse than yelling would have. We'll talk when everyone calms down, he said. But his eyes, the way he looked at me like I was a stranger causing trouble, told me that talk would never come. Patricia stood behind him with her hand on his shoulder, her face the picture of wounded dignity, but her eyes met mine with pure triumph. 2 weeks after that disastrous confrontation, my phone rang at 7 in the morning with Roger's name on the screen. His voice was shaking. We need to meet, now. Not at my office, somewhere public. We met at a coffee shop across town where neither of us would run into anyone we knew. Roger looked like he hadn't slept in days, his usual neat appearance replaced with wrinkled clothes and fear in his eyes. Dominic forced me out, he said without preamble. Threatened me into signing over my shares of the company. I stared at him, not understanding how that was even possible. Roger owned 30% of Crawford Commercial Properties, shares Head earned through 30 years of partnership with Dad. He found some old accounting discrepancies from years ago, Roger continued, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup he wasn't drinking. Honest mistakes. Things that were corrected at the time. But he said Head audit every transaction I've ever made and sue me into bankruptcy for fraud if I didn't sign. The accounting issues Roger mentioned were minor, the kind of small errors that happen in any business over decades. A few $1,000s miscategorized here, a late filing there, nothing that rose to the level of criminal activity. But Dominic had hired a forensic accountant to dig through 30 years of records and had compiled a document that made those mistakes look intentional. He said I could face criminal charges, Roger said, and I could hear the defeat in his voice. I have grandkids. I couldn't risk going to trial, even if I'd probably win. The legal fees alone would destroy me, so Roger had signed away 3 decades of work, his retirement security, his legacy, for nothing. And now Dominic controlled 51% of Dad's company. When I asked if Dad knew what really happened, Roger's laugh was bitter. Patricia told him I wanted to retire, that I was getting old and wanted to travel. Your father thinks I am on a cruise ship somewhere celebrating my freedom. He has no idea I'm working as a contractor now, trying to rebuild retirement savings from scratch at 65 years old. Roger grabbed my hand across the table, his grip desperate. Your father built that company from nothing. Don't let them steal it. You're the only one who can stop this. But I had no idea how to stop a machine that was already so far in motion. The annual charity gala, the same event where Dad had met Patricia 2 years earlier, seemed like neutral ground for me to try again. It was public, formal, a place where Patricia would have to maintain her polished facade. I bought a ticket, wore a dress that cost too much money, and walked into that ballroom with my head high and my evidence folder in my clutch. Dad was there with Patricia, surrounded by their social circle, everyone laughing at something someone had said. I approached carefully, waited for a break in conversation, and touched Dad's arm gently. Can we talk for just a minute, please? Patricia's response was immediate and loud enough for nearby groups to hear. Please, not here. We've discussed your demands already. What demands? It never made demands. But Patricia's voice carried the perfect tone of exhausted patience, a woman at the end of her rope with a difficult family member. I know you're struggling financially, she continued, projecting to our audience, but your father has been more than generous. Heads were turning now. People who'd known our family for years watching this scene unfold. She wants her inheritance now, Patricia said to the small crowd gathering around us. Can't wait for nature to take its course. If you understand my meaning, the implication was crystal clear and absolutely horrifying. She was suggesting I wanted Dad dead for his money. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Dad's face went pale, then red, mortification replacing any chance of him hearing me out. I tried to defend myself, opened my mouth to explain, but security was already approaching. Later, I learned Patricia had arranged it in advance, told security there might be a disturbance from a family member, and to please remove them quickly if anything happened. I was escorted out of the gala while 100 people watched, the greedy daughter being forcibly removed, exactly the scene Patricia had orchestrated. By the next morning, the story had spread through our entire community. At the grocery store, people I'd known my whole life looked away. A neighbor who used to bring me cookies at Christmas crossed the street to avoid me. In the middle of that nightmare, one person reached out with truth instead of judgment. Vera, Dad's estate attorney, and a woman who'd worked with our family for 20 years, called my cell phone from a number I didn't recognize. "I can't say much," she said carefully. "Attorney-client privilege limits me. But Patricia came to me asking me to draft a new will for your father." My heart stopped. "The new will leaves everything to Patricia. You're completely removed. Not even a token bequest." Vera had stalled, claiming she needed more documentation, but she was clear about the urgency. "Patricia will find another attorney who'll do it without asking questions. You need to act fast." Then, Vera told me something that changed everything. "Your mother made sure you'd be protected. Before she died, she added you as co-owner to most of the major accounts, not just as a beneficiary or a signer, but as actual joint owner with equal rights. As of right now, that money is legally half yours." The financial attorney Vera recommended explained it more clearly. "Your mother's estate planning was brilliant. She didn't just give you access, she gave you ownership, which means you have every legal right to move funds, make transfers, protect assets. Especially if you believe those assets are at risk of being stolen or fraudulently transferred." The investigator Sterling chimed in with her findings about Patricia's timeline. "She's planning the final transfers this weekend. After that, the money disappears into offshore accounts that will take years and millions in legal fees to trace. By the time you could win a court case, Patricia will be gone and the money will be impossible to recover." I sat in that conference room with 3 people telling me I had the legal right to act, to protect what my mother had worked so hard to secure, to stop Patricia from completing her con. The question wasn't whether I could do it. The question was whether I would. That night, alone in my apartment, I thought about Mom. About how Shed fought cancer with every ounce of strength she had, refusing to give up even when doctors said there was no hope. Shed added me to those accounts, because Shed's somehow known, even then, that I might need protection. Shed fought for me when she was dying, and now I needed to fight for what Shed left behind. My cousin Garrett had been like a brother growing up. We'd spent summers at the lake house, told each other secrets, stood up in each other's important life events. So when he called saying he believed me about Patricia, that he thought she was lying to everyone, relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly cried. "I've been watching her," he said. "Something's not right. The way she talks about you doesn't match the person I've known your whole life." Finally, someone from the family was seeing through Patricia's performance. We met at his house 3 days later, and I brought everything. The investigator's report, the financial records, the evidence of Patricia's previous marriages and cons, all of it laid out on his dining room table. Garrett listened, asked questions, seemed genuinely outraged on my behalf. "This is insane," he kept saying. "We need to tell the family. They need to know the truth." We planned an intervention for that Sunday at Grandma Louisa's house, the same house where we'd gathered for every major family event for 3 generations. Garrett would arrange it, tell everyone it was important, and I'd present the evidence. I spent the next 4 days preparing a presentation like I was pitching to investors, organizing documents chronologically, creating a timeline that was impossible to deny. This was my chance to save Dad, to save the family, to expose Patricia before she could finish stealing everything. Sunday morning, I drove to Grandma's house with a folder full of truth and hope beating in my chest for the first time in months. The moment I walked through the door, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. The entire family was there, but the atmosphere was hostile and cold, and Patricia was sitting in the living room next to Dad, her hand resting on Grandma's arm like they were the best of friends. Garrett stood up as I entered, and his face wasn't sympathetic. It was accusatory. "Everyone," he said loudly, "I asked you all here because we need to address something serious. Claire has been making accusations about Patricia, and I think we need to confront this as a family." The world tilted sideways as I realized what was happening. Garrett continued, pulling out his phone. "She's been planning to steal from Dad. Look at this evidence she tried to show me." He held up screenshots of our text messages, completely out of context, where I'd discussed accessing the accounts. She hired an investigator to create fake financial documents to make Patricia look guilty of fraud. She's planning to drain Dad's accounts and blame Patricia for it. No. No, that's not what happened. That's not what I said. But Garrett twisted every conversation we'd had, every piece of evidence I'd shared, into proof of my supposed plan to steal from my own father. The family erupted. My Uncle Harrison called me a disgrace to Mom's memory. My Aunt Dorothy was crying, saying she couldn't believe I'd turned out like this. Cousins I'd grown up with looked at me with disgust. I tried to show the real evidence, to explain, but Garrett had poisoned the well so thoroughly that no one would listen. Patricia stood up, moved toward me with an expression of theatrical sympathy that made me want to scream. "I know you're hurting, sweetie," she said in a voice dripping with false compassion. "Grief makes people do terrible things. Your mother wouldn't want this for you. She'd want you to get help." She was using Mom's memory as a weapon, standing in Mom's childhood home, manipulating Mom's family, and invoking Mom's wishes to destroy me. Grandma Louise, 92 years old and increasingly frail, looked at me with tears running down her wrinkled cheeks. "How could you do this to your father? To our family?" The disappointment in her voice broke something inside me that I wasn't sure could be repaired. Dad stood up, and he was shaking, not with anger but with something that looked like grief. "I think you should leave," he said quietly. "Don't contact me again until you're ready to apologize for all of this. Until you're ready to admit what you've tried to do." I looked around the room at faces I'd known my entire life. People who'd held me as a baby and celebrated every birthday, and saw nothing but judgment and disgust. I left Grandma's house and sat in my car in the driveway for over an hour, unable to drive, unable to process what had just happened. Later, much later, I learned that Patricia had paid Garrett $10,000 to set me up. $10,000 was the price of 30 years of cousin relationship, of shared childhood, of family loyalty. Had taken the money and orchestrated my complete destruction without a second thought. The betrayal from Garrett hurt worse than anything Patricia had done because I'd expected Patricia to be a snake. I'd never expected my own cousin to sell me out. That night in my apartment, alone and completely isolated from every person I'd ever called family, I sat on my bathroom floor and contemplated just giving up. Let Patricia have it all. Let her steal everything, divorce Dad, leave him broken. Maybe I'd move across the country, start over somewhere no one knew my name or my family's mess. I was scrolling mindlessly through my phone when an automated email notification popped up. 6-year anniversary of your mom's passing. The subject line read. It kept Mom's old email account active, unable to let go of that last connection. The attached photo was from Mom's last birthday before her diagnosis, before we knew cancer was growing inside her, before everything fell apart. We were at the lake house, her arm around me, both of us laughing at something Dad had said off camera. Mom's smile was so bright, so full of life and strength. She'd fought her cancer battle with everything she had, never gave up even when the doctors said there was no hope, kept fighting for one more day, one more moment with the people she loved, and in her final weeks, she'd made sure to protect me, added me to those accounts because she knew I might need that protection someday. Something hardened inside my chest as I stared at that photo. No, I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't let Patricia win. Mom had fought for me when she was dying, and I was going to fight now. Not for revenge, though I won't pretend that wasn't part of it. But for justice, for protection, for the future Mom had tried to secure before cancer took her. Patricia wanted a war? She was about to get one. 3 days after the family ambush at Grandma's house, I was working from home when my phone buzzed with a text notification. Dad's name on the screen made my heart jump because we hadn't spoken since that awful Sunday. Maybe he'd realized the truth. Maybe someone had talked sense into him. I opened the message with hope I shouldn't have allowed myself to feel. "I disown you. Talk to my lawyer." 5 words that ended our relationship. No explanation, no chance to defend myself, just a cold statement delivered via text message like he was canceling a subscription. My hands started shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. A second text came through before I could process the first. "You are no longer my daughter. You will receive nothing from me, now or ever. My attorney will handle removing you from all accounts and documents." Then a third message. Do not contact me or Patricia again. Legal action will follow harassment. I stared at the screen, reading the words over and over, each time hoping they'd somehow change or reveal themselves to be some kind of cruel joke. But they stayed the same. Cold, final, devastating. This was it, total severance. Patricia had won. She'd systematically destroyed every relationship I had, turned my father against me completely, and now he was officially disowning me. I thought about what he expected, probably tearful phone calls begging for forgiveness, desperate pleas to reconsider, maybe me showing up at the house crying and apologizing for things I'd never done. Instead, I typed a single word with steady fingers. Okay. One word. Calm. Final. Accepting. I hit send and felt something click into place inside me. That single okay was going to haunt him, though he didn't know it yet. That evening, Patricia posted on social media, something she did constantly to maintain her image of the perfect wife. This post was vaguer than usual, but clearly directed at recent events. Sometimes you have to cut toxic people out of your life, even family, she wrote. Protecting my husband's peace and our future together. Sending love to everyone who understands that family isn't always blood. The post got dozens of likes and supportive comments within minutes. You're so strong, Patricia, wrote someone from Dad's club. Has lucky to have you protecting him, said another. That girl never deserved him anyway, wrote someone I'd gone to high school with. I watched it all unfold from my laptop, hadn't blocked anyone because I wanted to see their moves in real time. Patricia threw a small gathering at Dad's house that week, disguised as a support group but really a celebration of her victory. My cousin Mallory posted photos. Patricia and Dad smiling and surrounded by family members, everyone looking relieved and happy. The caption read, "Real family supports each other through hard times." The image of them all together while I was completely exiled felt like a knife twisting in an already open wound. Sterling sent me an update that same day. Patricia's attorney has drafted all the paperwork to remove you from the accounts and the will. Everything's ready to file. I also intercepted communications that suggest she's moving much faster now. The final asset transfers are happening this weekend, and she plans to file divorce papers within 2 weeks. Patricia's timeline had accelerated. She'd won the war against me and was now moving in for the final kill against Dad. By the end of the month, he'd be divorced, broke, and completely destroyed. I called an emergency meeting at Vera's law office. Vera was there with Sterling and the financial attorney, Maxwell, that Shed recommended. We laid everything out on the conference room table, a map of financial devastation and legal strategy. Maxwell reviewed all the documents with the careful attention of someone who knew we were about to do something that would have massive consequences. This is textbook elder financial abuse, he said. If you took this to court, you'd probably win. Eventually. In about 2 years, after spending hundreds of thousands in legal fees. But court wasn't an option. By the time we got through depositions and hearings and trials, the money would be gone. Sterling confirmed it. Patricia's moving the final transfers this weekend. After that, the money goes into offshore accounts that are nearly impossible to trace. You could spend 5 years and $2 million in legal fees and never recover the stolen funds. Vera looked at me with serious eyes. You have legal right to those accounts right now. Your mother made sure of that. She gave you co-ownership, not just access. Legally, a significant portion of that money is already yours. Maxwell leaned forward. Your mother's estate plan was brilliant. She added you as joint owner with rights of survivorship on most of the major accounts. That means you're not just authorized to access them. You're an equal owner. And as an equal owner, you have every legal right to move funds, make transfers, and protect assets, especially if you have good faith belief that those assets are at risk of being stolen or fraudulently transferred. Sterling added her perspective. Patricia is about to do something very illegal with funds that are partially yours. It suggests you exercise your legal rights before she commits fraud with your money. I sat there looking at 3 professionals telling me I had both the legal right and the moral justification to act. The question that kept running through my head was whether this was right. Was I any better than Patricia if I took the money? But Vera answered that question before I could ask it. Your mother added you to those accounts because she wanted you protected. She knew something might happen. Some situation might arise where you'd need that security. This is that situation. Honoring your mother's wishes isn't theft. It's fulfilling the exact purpose she had in mind. That night at 10 p.m., I sat at my computer with Maxwell on a video call and Sterling monitoring everything to document the process. In front of me was a list of accounts Mom had added me to 6 years ago: 7 bank accounts, 3 investment accounts, 2 business accounts. Total value, $3.2 million. This was what remained after Patricia had already stolen $800,000. This was Dad's entire life savings, Mom's life insurance, business profits from 3 decades of work, and Patricia was about to steal every penny of it and disappear. Maxwell's voice was calm and professional. Remember, you're not stealing. You're a legal co-owner exercising your rights to protect assets from fraud. Everything we're doing is documented and legal. Are you ready? Was I ready? I thought about Dad's text message. I disown you. I thought about Patricia's smug smile at Grandma's house. I thought about Mom in her hospital bed making me promise to watch over things. I was ready. The first account was a savings account with $400,000. I clicked through the transfer screens, moving the full amount to a new account. ID opened in my name only. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. The transfer processed. Successful. No alerts, no blocks, no problems. I moved to the second account, then the third, working methodically through the list. Investment accounts took longer, required more steps, but Maxwell guided me through each one. By 2 in the morning, every account was empty. All funds moved to protected accounts Patricia couldn't touch. $3.2 million secured. I stared at the final confirmation screens, my hands shaking with adrenaline and fear and something that might have been triumph. Maxwell's voice broke through my thoughts. It's done. Everything's documented, all transfers are legal, and the funds are now in accounts with only your name. Patricia can't access them, can't reverse the transfers, and can't claim they were unauthorized because you're a legal owner. Sterling added, now we wait for them to notice. And when they do, it's going to get very loud very fast. Morning came too quickly. I'd barely slept, jumping at every sound, half expecting police to break down my door even though I'd done nothing illegal. My phone started ringing at 8 a.m. Dad's number. I didn't answer. It rang 12 more times before moving to voicemail. Then Patricia's number started calling, over and over, 23 calls in an hour. I let them all go to voicemail, let the panic on the other end build while I stayed silent. Dad's first voicemail was confused. Honey, there's been some kind of mistake with the accounts. Can you call the bank? Something's wrong with the system. By his fifth voicemail, confusion had turned to realization. What did you do? Call me right now. This isn't funny. The desperation in his voice should have made me feel guilty, but all I could think about was how Head sent me that disowning text without a second thought. Patricia's voicemails were pure venom from the start. You little thief. I'm calling the police. Do you understand what you've done? Then, your father is having a complete breakdown because of you. Are you happy now? And finally, we will sue you for every penny and you'll go to prison. You've destroyed your life. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I called Maxwell. They know. His voice was unsurprised. Expected. Don't communicate with them directly about anything. If they want to talk, they can call me. Within an hour, Dad's attorney called Maxwell. The conversation, which Maxwell relayed to me afterward, was heated. Dad's attorney threatened everything. Civil lawsuit, criminal charges, emergency injunctions, anything he could think of. Maxwell's response was calm and legally airtight. My client exercised her rights as legal co-owner of the accounts in question. Check the paperwork. Everything was done properly. Dad's attorney sputtered about theft and fraud, but Maxwell cut him off. Theft would be what your client's wife has been doing with offshore accounts and shell companies. Would you like me to elaborate on that in court? Because I have extensive documentation of Mrs. Crawford's financial fraud, and I suspect the district attorney would be very interested. The line went quiet for a long moment before Dad's attorney said Head need to consult with his clients and hung up. That evening brought Patricia to my apartment building in person, and her polished facade had completely shattered. Building security called to warn me someone was causing a disturbance in the lobby, and I pulled up the doorbell camera feed on my phone. Patricia was there, screaming at the security guard, her face red and makeup smeared. I started recording as she moved to my apartment door and began pounding on it hard enough to make the frame shake. "Open this door, you bitch!" she screamed, all pretense of sweetness and light completely gone. "That's my money. I worked for it. I earned it." Interesting choice of words. Not your father's money, but my money. My neighbors opened their doors to see what the commotion was about, and Patricia's performance continued. "Do you know what you've done? I planned this for 2 years. 2 years of dealing with that pathetic old man and his boring life and his dead wife's memory in every corner of that house." Building security arrived with Jackson, the guard Patricia had been yelling at in the lobby. He tried to calm her down, suggest she leave before the police were called, but Patricia was beyond reason. She shoved Jackson, actually physically pushed him, and kept screaming. "You think you've won? You've destroyed your father. Has in there having chest pains because his ungrateful daughter is a thief." The police arrived within 10 minutes, and Patricia tried to pull herself together. She smoothed her hair, wiped her face, attempted to become the sophisticated woman she pretended to be. But there were too many witnesses. Jackson told the officers about the assault. Mrs. Henderson from apartment 4C told them about the screaming and door pounding. The police informed Patricia that I was within my rights to press charges for harassment and assault on building staff. Patricia tried to explain that I'd stolen from her husband, that she was the victim here, but the police were clear. "Ma'am, civil financial disputes need to be handled in court, not in apartment building hallways. You need to leave now." As she was being escorted out, Patricia couldn't help one final outburst. "I'll sue you for everything. My attorney will destroy you in court. You're going to wish you'd never been born." I sent copies of all the security footage and doorbell camera recordings to Maxwell within minutes. His response came back quickly. "This is absolutely beautiful evidence." Her own words admitting to planning this con for 2 years. Caught on camera. If she tries to claim she's an innocent wife caught in a family dispute, we now have her confessing to the fraud. Dad called one more time that night, but this time his voice on the voicemail wasn't angry. It was broken. "Please, just tell me why. I don't understand what I did that was so terrible you had to do this. That money was supposed to be for my retirement. How am I supposed to live now?" The pain in his voice cut through my anger for just a moment, but then I remembered. Had chosen Patricia over me repeatedly. Had believed every lie, dismissed every warning, sent me a text message disowning me without even a conversation. I'd saved that money from Patricia's theft, not stolen it from him. If he couldn't see the difference, that wasn't my problem to fix. Roger called me 3 days after the money transfer with news I hadn't expected. "I finally got through to your father," he said. Went to his house and refused to leave until he looked at everything I brought. Roger had compiled his own documentation, proof of how Dominic had forced him out of the business, the threats that had been made, the timeline of asset stripping that had happened under Patricia's guidance. "He didn't want to hear it at first," Roger continued. "Kept defending her, saying I was in on whatever conspiracy you'd supposedly created, but I made him look at the numbers. Really look at them." Dad had finally seen what I'd been trying to show him for months. Roger laid out every transfer, every offshore account, every shell company Patricia had created. The pattern was undeniable once someone actually looked. Nearly $2 million had vanished from accounts Dad thought were secure, moved into financial structures that had nothing to do with business strategy or tax planning, and everything to do with theft. Roger showed Dad texts Patricia had sent from Dad's phone without his knowledge, messages to family members that made me look unstable and greedy, all sent under Dad's name while he was sleeping or at work. Dad had physically gotten sick, Roger told me. Had to sit down, put his head between his knees, breathe through what felt like a panic attack as the full scope of Patricia's manipulation revealed itself. "What have I done?" Head said over and over. "What have I done to my daughter?" Roger had left him with all the documentation and a simple message. "She's been trying to tell you this for months. You chose not to listen." That night, Dad confronted Patricia in the house they shared. I wasn't there, but I heard the story later from multiple sources who'd heard Patricia screaming through the walls. Dad demanded answers about the offshore accounts, about the shell companies, about the money that had disappeared. Patricia tried her usual tactics first, turning on tears and playing victim. I don't know what you're talking about. Your daughter has poisoned your mind. Can't you see she's trying to destroy our marriage? But Dad had finally seen through the performance. Where is the money, Patricia? What are these accounts in the Cayman Islands? Why are there companies in your name that I've never heard of? Patricia's tears stopped like someone had flipped a switch. Her face went cold, calculating, the mask dropping completely. That money was wasted on you anyway, she said with venom that stunned him. You're old, boring, and you were an easy mark. I've done this before, and I'll do it again. She admitted everything. The planning that had started the night she met him at the charity gala. The other husbands Shed conned and divorced. The timeline Shed been following to drain his accounts and disappear. But your precious daughter ruined it, Patricia hissed. She took what I spent 2 years earning. Earning. Not stealing. In her mind, manipulating a grieving widower and systematically robbing him was work Shed earned payment for. Dad was devastated, the full weight of his choices crashing down on him. Get out, he said quietly. Get out of my house right now. But Patricia laughed, high and cruel. It's my house now, legally. I'm on the deed. You'll have to drag me out. So Dad called the police, reported an intruder who refused to leave his property. Patricia was screaming as officers arrived, insisting she had rights as his wife, threatening to take him for everything in the divorce. There's nothing left to take, Dad said with hollow finality. You made sure of that. The police escorted Patricia from the property, her threats echoing down the driveway as neighbors watched. I'll destroy you in court. You'll be homeless when I'm done. That money is mine. The woman who'd played the perfect sophisticated wife for 2 years was being dragged away screaming like someone unhinged. The next morning, Dad appeared at my apartment building. The security guard called up to ask if I wanted to see him, and I almost said no. But something in the guard's voice, some tone of pity, made me agree. Dad looked like Head aged 20 years overnight. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled, moving like a man who'd been physically beaten. I opened my apartment door but didn't invite him in. Just stood there waiting. I don't expect forgiveness, he said without preamble. I know I don't deserve it. His voice was rough, like He'd been crying or screaming or both. Patricia showed me everything Shed done. How Shed manipulated me, used my grief over your mother, turned me against you. I chose her over you. Over your mother's memory. Over everything that should have mattered. I stayed silent, let him talk, didn't help him with his confession. He explained how Patricia had made him feel alive again after years of grief. How desperate He'd been for that feeling that He'd ignored every red flag I'd tried to point out. I let her turn me against you, he said, and his voice broke. I sent that text message. I disowned my own daughter because a con artist told me to. Your mother would be ashamed of me. The truth of that statement hung heavy between us. Yes, I said quietly. She would be. Dad flinched like I'd slapped him but nodded. He understood that some things couldn't be softened. The money you took, he started, then corrected himself. The money you protected, you were saving it from her, weren't you? You knew what she was going to do. I nodded. I saved it from both of you. Because you were letting her steal everything Mom and you built, and you wouldn't listen when I tried to warn you. Dad's face crumpled. That's fair. That's more than fair. He asked what he could do to make things right, and I was honest. I don't know if you can. Trust isn't something you can rebuild with apologies. You believed a woman you'd known for 2 years over the daughter you'd raised for 32 years. I don't know how we come back from that. He nodded, accepting the reality He'd created. I understand, but I want to try. However long it takes, whatever I need to do, I want to try. Patricia hired an aggressive attorney and sued for the funds I'd transferred, claiming they were stolen from her husband. The case was dismissed within 2 months. Maxwell presented Mom's estate documents, the account paperwork showing my co-ownership, and the timeline of Patricia's systematic theft. The judge reviewed everything and ruled that I'd exercised my legal rights as account owner and that Patricia had no standing to sue for funds that were never hers. Patricia's attorney tried to argue emotional distress and manipulation, but Maxwell presented the security camera footage of her confession. "I planned this for 2 years," her own voice said from the courtroom speakers. Case dismissed. Patricia filed for divorce immediately, demanding alimony and half of Dad's remaining assets. Dad's attorney, now armed with evidence of her fraud and financial abuse, countered with everything Wed compiled. The recordings of her confessions, the documentation of offshore accounts, the pattern of previous marriages and cons. Patricia walked away from the divorce with nothing. In fact, she was ordered to return the $800,000 shed already stolen, though we all knew that money was long gone and unrecoverable. Dominic faced embezzlement charges for how Head forced Roger out of the business. Roger was reinstated as co-owner with Dad's full support, and they began the slow process of rebuilding what had been damaged. Patricia's 3 previous husbands, learning about the case through news coverage, contacted Dad's attorney. Together, the 4 men built a collective case with enough evidence that prosecutors got interested. Patricia was facing potential prison time for fraud and elder abuse across multiple states. Last I heard, Patricia had fled to Costa Rica with whatever money Shed managed to hide before everything collapsed. There's an international warrant, but prosecution across borders is complicated and slow. She's gone, but the consequences of her actions follow her. She'll be looking over her shoulder for a long time. The extended family's response to the truth was mixed. Aunt Dorothy cried when she learned what really happened, showed up at my apartment with flowers and apologies, begging for forgiveness. Some uncles and cousins apologized too, admitted they'd been wrong to believe Patricia's lies without questioning them. But others stayed silent, too proud or stubborn to admit they'd failed me. Garrett, the cousin who'd betrayed me for $10,000, never apologized. He stopped coming to family events, and I heard Head moved out of state. Some relationships are too broken to repair. Grandma Louise asked me to visit her at the nursing home where Shed moved after the stress of everything affected her health. She held my hand with fingers that shook from age and medication and cried. "I'm an old fool who believed a good liar," she said. "But you're my granddaughter and I love you. Can you forgive me?" I forgave Grandma because she was 92 and had been manipulated like everyone else. I forgave some of the aunts and uncles who genuinely seemed remorseful. But forgiveness didn't mean trust, and some family bonds had been damaged beyond repair. Dad and I went to family therapy, something Head suggested, and it agreed to with heavy skepticism. It was slow, painful work. Some sessions ended with both of us crying. Some ended with me walking out because I couldn't handle the emotions. It took 6 months before I could sit through dinner with him without anger rising in my throat. It took a year before I could hug him without feeling the ghost of that disowning text message. Progress wasn't linear. Good days were followed by terrible ones where I couldn't even look at him. But we both committed to the process. Dad sold the house because it held too many bad memories, downsized to a condo near the city. He gave me full control over major business decisions because, as he said with painful honesty, I clearly can't be trusted with important choices. It was self-deprecating but also true. Head learned the hardest possible lesson about judgment and trust. He went to individual therapy for grief, finally processing Mom's death properly. His therapist explained that Head never grieved correctly, just pushed the pain down and tried to move forward, which made him vulnerable to Patricia's manipulation. I learned my own lessons through therapy. Even people who love you can fail you spectacularly. That doesn't mean you cut everyone off forever, but it means boundaries become essential. I learned to trust my instincts instead of dismissing them to keep peace. I learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish when the alternative is letting people destroy you. One afternoon over coffee, Dad asked carefully about the money. "Do you think you would consider, maybe, eventually?" He trailed off, not wanting to ask directly. I'd already decided what to do with the $3.2 million I'd protected. "Half goes into a trust for future grandchildren," I told him. "A quarter goes to charity in Mom's name, specifically for cancer research and support for families dealing with terminal illness. The last quarter I'm keeping as security for my future." Dad nodded slowly. "That's more than fair. Your mother would be proud of how you handled all of this." Maybe, maybe not. But I was proud of myself. And that mattered more than anyone else's approval. 2 years have passed since that text message that ended everything and started something new. Dad and I have rebuilt a relationship, but it's different now. There's caution where there used to be blind trust. I love him, but I don't rely on him the way I once did. We have Sunday dinners again, reinstated at my insistence, but the dynamic has shifted. I'm not his little girl anymore. I'm an adult who saved us both from destruction, and he knows it. Some wounds scar, and those scars serve as reminders to be careful. I'm careful now in ways I never was before. I watch for red flags in relationships. I trust my judgment. I don't dismiss my concerns to make other people comfortable. These aren't bad changes. They're survival skills earned through fire. The lesson I learned, the one I want to share with all of you, is this. Family loyalty is important, but not at the cost of your own destruction. There's a difference between supporting the people you love and letting them harm you while you stand there and take it. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's the only way to save everyone involved, even if they don't see it at the time. My mother's foresight saved me. Adding me to those accounts when she was dying was her final act of maternal protection. She couldn't have known the specific situation I'd face, but she knew enough to make sure I'd have options when life got hard. I honored her memory by using the protection shed given me to fight back. So here's what I want you to take from my story. If someone demands you choose between your integrity and their approval, choose yourself every time. If people show you who they really are through their actions, believe them. And if you have to walk away with what's rightfully yours to protect yourself from people who should love you, that's not betrayal, that's survival. My dad texted I disown you, and I replied, okay. That single word gave me the power to act without guilt, to save both of us from a con artist who would have left us destroyed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept someone's choice to push you away and use that freedom to protect yourself. Sometimes walking away with what's yours and letting people face the consequences of their choices is the only way forward. Patricia took 2 years from my father's life, convinced him to betray his daughter, and nearly stole everything Head worked 30 years to build. But I made sure that's all she'd ever take from us. That money is secure, the business is recovering, and Dad and I are rebuilding something that might never be what it was, but it's real and honest in ways the old relationship never had to be. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who refuse to see the truth? Have you been in a situation where protecting yourself meant looking like the villain? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read them all, and I promise you're not alone in these experiences. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more real-life stories about family, betrayal, and survival. Share this with someone who needs to hear that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for being part of this community where we can share these hard truths. Remember that you deserve protection, security, and relationships built on honesty instead of manipulation. Take care of yourselves out there, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that loyalty means accepting abuse. Until next time, stay strong and know your worth.